Now that we have these pieces in, and we've also got the frame or the chassis in, I think we can begin to work on some of these connecting pieces inside here. And it's kind of hard to see exactly what we're dealing with. I'll press Control Spacebar and zoom way in here. But it looks to me like from this piece here that we just created, there's a brace that goes kind of up and across and then back down on the other side. And then there's this cylindrical piece here on top of that that kind of connects to this piece that we didn't create when we were creating the chassis. And that's because I knew we'd have more pieces in here to kind of fit this in. So I'd like to begin working on this. Let's begin with this bracket here, this connecting piece between those two sides. Control Spacebar to go back to there. And just as a reminder of where we're going with this, I'm going to go back to the reference images, and here this motorcycle chassis, I'll once again press Control Spacebar, and this piece right here. So that's where that cylindrical piece connects to the bracket, right? So we're going to need to create this as well. We're not going to need to create it in extreme detail by any means. And that's one of the reasons why I leave these kind of internal pieces until later, because we often don't need to give it all that much detail once we have all the other pieces on the outside in place. So let me see if I can go back and find that reference image that we were just looking at, or at least one that can help us. Let me take a look at this one here, see what this looks like. Yeah, this is actually pretty good. This gives us a pretty good sense of what that bracket piece is doing here. So what I think I want to do is create a cylinder and then extrude it back and up and over and connect in the middle. Once again, it isn't going to be a perfect piece, but we need something in there to connect those two sides. So for these brackets, let me tab into edit mode, and maybe I'll just select this edge loop right here and bring the cursor to that with Shift S2. And then I think we need to create a cylinder for this piece right here. Let me go back to median point, and I'll press Shift A, mesh cylinder. And for this, let's take it down to maybe 16 sides. And I'll go ahead and type in 0.1 and 0.2 for the size of it. And I don't think I need a cap fill, so I'm just going to choose nothing. And then let's go to the side view, go to wireframe, and now let's try and scale this down, turn it, and once we turn it, I think we need to be in local transformation mode. So I'm going to hit the period key and choose local, and now we can scale and move in alignment to the object here. So I'll scale in a bit, scale in the Z. Let's bring this down, and I think right in here is what we want, maybe right in there. Let's try that. I'll press Z and go to solid, and then let's scale in the X, SX, and bring that in like this. Maybe bring it in the Y just a bit like that. Okay, so we've got that. Now let's begin extruding this across. Let me scale it down a little bit in the Z. And then what we can do is select a couple of faces over here, maybe these 6 faces, and let's extrude this out. So in the X-axis here, I'll hit EX and pull out a bit. And let's see if we're intersecting. Yeah, we are. Maybe right about to here. And then let's flatten this. So to flatten this, let's scale in the X-axis. And in fact, what we can do is press SX and the 0 key, and that'll flatten that, and then press Enter. It looks like I might be able to take this whole thing up just a little bit like this. There we go. And then, all right, let's move it out until we almost intersect with that fender. And then let's bring it up. So what I'm going to do is just hit E and pull out. And then just pull straight up like this. There we go. And then we want to go toward the center. So I'll hit E again and come toward the center like that. Now I'll bring this back just a bit because let me tab back into object mode and let's mirror this. So to do that, we're going to need that origin in the center of the grid. So I'm going to press Shift S1 to move the cursor and then go to Object, Set Origin to 3D Cursor to get that in the center of the grid. Now let's come over here to the Modifiers panel, add a mirror modifier, and there we go. Now we've got some rotation in the X, but I don't think that's going to bother us here. I think that's okay. So if we tab back into edit mode now, we've got these faces, and we don't want internal faces on our object. So let's delete these, delete faces, and then let's alt-click this edge here to select that. And then as we move this in, once again, we don't get any clipping. So let's turn on clipping. And then when we bring this in, that'll snap together like that. Okay, so we've got that. Now, if you want to adjust this a bit, you can always say alt-click this edge and move it back a bit, get it a little wider or something like that. But generally speaking, I think that's probably pretty good right there. So then what let's do is let's add a few edge loops, maybe one along here, because I want to get these ridges on the top and the bottom. So let's put some edge loops in here, and then in face mode, we can alt-click and alt-shift-click those face loops. We could also turn on cage right here, so that extends to the other side. And then let's extrude these and scale these out, but we're not going to be able to do it all at once. I think we better do it one axis at a time. So let's hit E and then Enter. And then I'm going to press SY and scale out just a bit like this in the Y axis here. And then I'm going to come over here and just these faces, maybe right in here, these 4 along here, I'm just going to pull out in the X-axis like this. There we go. So now we've got that ridge all the way around. That looks pretty good. Now let's smooth it and come down here to our Object Data Properties and turn on Auto Smooth here. And we may be able to click and drag and clean that up just a little bit. Yeah, just bring it up to around 34 or so. That cleans that up pretty nicely. And then there are a couple of other things I think I'd like to do. One is I'd like more of a rounded edge on this. So I'm going to tab into edit mode and go to edge mode, and I'll alt-click this, alt-shift-click, alt-shift-click these. So we get those edges. And I want to bevel these, but do we have our scale uniform? We do not. So I'm going to press Control A and apply the scale. And then let's press Control B and pull these out a bit. Scroll the mouse wheel a couple times and we get our curved edges there. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Now I've got these here. Maybe I can drag this up just a bit. Yeah, that cleans that up just a bit. Good. And then finally, I'm going to close this up. I don't want this to be quite as open. So I'm going to alt-click this edge and alt-shift-click this edge. And then we're going to want to scale in the X and the Y, but not the Z. If we scale in the Z, it'll pull these together, and we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is extrude and then scale while turning off the Z axis here. So let's press E, S, Shift Z to turn off the Z axis, and then bring those in so they close up there. All right. Yeah, there we go. So I think we've got something like that connecting bracket here. Before we create this cylinder, let's, in the next video, work on that connecting piece up here so we can see how far away it is and how big that cylinder needs to be.